You did the work, solved the problem, spotted the gap early, then watched someone louder collect the credit in the meeting. Once, you call it a fluke. 3 times, you get suspicious. After years, the room starts feeling like proof you're invisible. Then the silence writes a story. Maybe you're not ambitious enough, not confident enough, not leadership material after all. But you're not missing some secret trait. Your quiet competence is being misread by a system built to notice noise. So let's name what is happening in meetings, evaluations, and promotions, especially to the quiet person nobody has explained this to. Modern workplaces often run on the extrovert ideal, an invisible standard hidden inside hiring, promotion, and performance reviews. The hidden assumption is simple. The best ideas come from loud voices, visible enthusiasm, and people who fill silence fast. Usually, no one is plotting against you. It is a measurement error so old that managers mistake it for judgment. Researchers give this experience a name, the introvert penalty, a measurable bias against employees who appear reserved rather than expressive. The central question is brutal. When 2 people deliver the same quality work, which one gets rewarded by the organization? At Harvard Business School, John Yakimowicz and his team studied how managers judged expressive employees versus quieter, reserved ones. Managers saw identical work samples and outcomes. The only thing changed was whether the employee sounded outgoing or quiet. Same results, same quality, same contribution. Only the perceived behavior changed, from highly expressive and outgoing to reserved and quiet. The result should stop you cold. Expressive employees were rated more passionate, motivated, and deserving of raises and promotions. Not because their work was better. They were simply easier for managers to read as driven, energetic, and ready. Managers used visible energy as a proxy for internal drive, and the dangerous part is, they usually never noticed. This is not only about fairness, it is about perception. Humans trust what they can see, especially under pressure. If you are quiet, your deepest preparation, careful thinking, and desire to get it right are invisible by default. You value accuracy, depth, and restraint. The workplace often rewards speed, volume, and emotional display instead. And the penalty compounds. Small misreadings in meetings become missed raises, stalled promotions, and a career narrative you never chose. The penalty compounds through 3 mechanisms: talk time, passion display, and the availability cascade, each quietly stacking against reserved people. First is the talk time heuristic. The more someone speaks, the more the room assumes they are contributing. Research links meeting talk time with perceived competence, even when the actual comments are ordinary, repetitive, or low value. One person speaks 4 times with average ideas. Another speaks once with the strongest insight in the room. But frequency creates the feeling of contribution, so repeated average input can look more valuable than one precise intervention. That mechanism is cognitive, not necessarily malicious. Human memory grabs repeated signals faster than careful substance. Quiet workers lose here because even excellent ideas may appear too rarely to register as a pattern. Imagine a meeting where the best point lands once, then gets buried under louder, faster discussion. Later, the room remembers who talked most, not who actually changed the logic of the decision. So the first rule is brutal. If quality is not audible, many workplaces simply fail to count it. The second mechanism is passion display bias, where visible enthusiasm becomes the workplace's shortcut for commitment. Managers are often taught, directly or indirectly, to look for passion, initiative, energy, and visible drive. The problem is that, in many offices, visible passion is coded to look exactly like extroversion. It looks like leaning forward, answering quickly, speaking with animation, and jumping in before silence lasts too long. But introverted passion may look like 2 days of research, careful preparation, and one precise recommendation. Because that passion is quiet, it often gets judged as adequate, competent, fine, but not promotable. That mislabeling affects reviews, stretch assignments, and leadership pipelines, because evaluators mistake presentation style for growth potential. The reserved employee may care deeply. Their care just arrives in a format the system is not trained to recognize. Someone spends 2 days finding the flaw, names it calmly, then gets described afterward as low energy. Passion is real in both cases, but workplaces often grade only its loudest costume. The third mechanism is darker. an availability cascade inside meetings, where repeated voices become the easiest version of reality to remember. Frequent speakers do not only receive credit for their own ideas, over time, they can absorb nearby ideas by association. The sequence feels familiar. A quiet person makes the point, then someone louder repeats it with force and polish. By the end, the room remembers the confident restatement more clearly than the original insight that changed the discussion. That leaves the original thinker feeling robbed, while struggling to prove an event that happened in fragments and impressions. This is not always deliberate theft. Often, it is unconscious perceptual drift, with no villain and real consequences. Louder repetition feels like ownership, because confidence and recency overwrite the quieter source our brains did not store firmly. Repeated attribution errors build reputations for visible people, while quietly erasing the record of those who found the gap first. The quiet worker's ideas travel upward into decisions and summaries, but their name often does not travel with them. So silence creates a vacuum. When your contribution is not marked, credit can drift toward the loudest available signal. At this point, many quiet workers reach the uncomfortable conclusion, maybe survival means becoming louder than they naturally are. And yes, speaking more, projecting energy, and performing confidence can work for a while in biased rooms. But that strategy has a hidden psychological cost, one many workplaces praise publicly and never measure privately. That cost is emotional labor dissonance, the strain of performing a personality that does not match your natural state. Forced extroversion is not just tiring. It can make success feel strangely inauthentic, detached from the person doing the work. The burnout pattern is cruel. You become visible, but lose the energy that made your careful thinking valuable. This is different from ordinary fatigue. It is the deeper exhaustion of constantly acting like someone else to be counted. Becoming louder may win attention today, while quietly eroding the sustainability you need for years of good work. So reject the false choice, burn out by performing, or stay invisible by remaining completely silent. The goal is not louder behavior. The goal is smarter visibility, making your thinking traceable before it disappears. The introvert penalty is not just unfair to individuals. It quietly damages companies by filtering out careful thinking before decisions are made. When people learn that ideas need performance to matter, the organization stops receiving the best thinking from its quietest minds. First, some quiet employees leave without drama. No angry speech, no honest exit interview, just competence walking out the door. Second, others stay, but stop offering their best insights. After enough ignored signals, speaking up starts to feel pointless. They still do the work. They meet expectations. But the extra analysis, warnings, and original solutions quietly disappear from view. That is the invisible damage. The company loses original insight, yet sees no obvious evidence, because the evidence is silence. So if this happened to you, do not call it weakness. It is a predictable failure in how workplaces notice value. The answer is not to perform extroversion until you burn out. The better move is to become strategically visible. Strategic visibility means making your thinking traceable, so people can see the work without you dominating every conversation. The first move is simple and powerful. Document your thinking before the meeting begins, while the room is still quiet. Private notes help you think, but they do not protect credit. The idea must exist where other people can see it. Use a shared document, an email, a project thread, or one brief message to the person shaping the decision. The timestamp matters. It proves your idea existed before the meeting's louder voices arrived and reshaped the memory. Then, if someone restates the same point with force, the origin is already visible instead of floating in the room. This is not being defensive or political. It is making invisible thinking legible to a system that often misreads silence. Before a meeting, write 3 clean lines: the risk, the recommendation, and the reason. No apology, no essay. Now your insight enters the room before talk time takes over. The discussion starts with your thinking already on the table. Attribution becomes easier when the idea already has your name on it. Credit has less room to drift away. The second move uses a tool introverts often execute beautifully, the precise question that cuts through noise without adding more. Extroverts often talk to think. Introverts often think to talk, which means their best contribution may arrive already refined. While others are processing aloud, your quiet thinking may already be ahead, noticing the gap everyone keeps talking around. The high-leverage moment arrives when the room circles confusion and you can calmly name the center of the problem. One calm, accurate question can be worth 20 enthusiastic statements because it changes what the whole room is evaluating. Ask, what assumption are we making? What risk are we ignoring? What evidence would actually change our mind here? Questions work because they redirect attention without demanding dominance, performance, or the exhausting costume of forced extroversion. Later, people may not remember every comment, but they remember who asked the question that clarified the decision. Do not weaken the question by over-explaining afterward. The power comes from precision, timing, and letting silence work. Quiet influence does not require constant airtime. It can happen through one well-timed moment of clarity the room needed. Here is the micro-habit to test in your very next work interaction before the old pattern repeats again. Before the meeting, write one sentence that captures your sharpest observation, the risk, the gap, or the recommendation. Send that sentence to one relevant person or post it in the channel where the decision is already forming. Do not bury it under apologies, disclaimers, or a long explanation designed to make the insight feel safer. Treat it like an experiment. If nothing happens, you lose nothing. If it gets used, attribution already exists. Repeat it for 3 meetings so your thinking becomes visible as a pattern others can recognize and remember. You are not less competent, less ambitious, or less passionate. You were being measured with the wrong instrument. You did the work, you solved the problem, you found the gap before anyone else even saw it. The silence after that was not proof of your inadequacy. It was proof of a bias nobody named for you. Now you know the name, the mechanisms, and the cost of the introvert penalty inside everyday workplace decisions. You do not need to become louder. You need to make your thinking visible before the room forgets where it began. Your work was never invisible because it lacked value. It was invisible because no one taught you how to market.